Star Wars. One of, if not the greatest film franchises ever to be made. With the first installment being released in 1977 and the most recent in 2019, this series is no unknown franchise. Welcome back to Fallen Angel Productions, where I explain what a movie is. With the number of spin-offs and sequels Star Wars has, there of course had to be some forgotten ones. One of which is the discussion today. Back in 1977, George Lucas made the first ever Star Wars, and to say it was a massive success would be a humongous understatement. But only 1 year later, Star Wars would receive its first ever sequel, the blockbuster movie, The Star Wars Holiday Special. Yeah, this movie sucked. People hated it. Luckily, it was a TV movie, so it was never cinematically released. Luckily. Into the 80s, Star Wars became a trilogy, with 2 new entries under its belt. But after The Jedi returned in 1983, what was next for the franchise? The long-awaited prequels George was talking about?
The DeLoreans?
Maybe. But there is a Star Wars prequel released in the 80s. The long-forgotten movie released in 1984, The Ewok Adventure, or as it was known internationally, The Caravan of Courage, for some reason. This movie was never released cinematically and has basically been forgotten since airing on TV. However, it has recently resurfaced online after Disney Plus added their new collection, Star Wars Vintage. I'd seen it at a young age, thanks to my mum owning it on VHS. I have this movie on VHS. Like, seriously, it's that old. Like, look at that. Look at that. Honestly, it's always great to see some VHS and not you. Get out of here. Go and get. Horrible movie. This good. You get out of here. I guess we have to address the elephant in the room. Yes, there is a sequel to this. Will I be reviewing it? Maybe, I don't know. The sequel is horrible and barely watchable.
I'm going over to that stove and getting me some more soup. Whatever you do, you stay right where you are.
I do highly suggest you watch Caravan of Courage though. It's way better. But when it comes to the sequel Battle for Endor, let me point you at a better George Lucas movie, Labyrinth. It's so much better well made. Caravan of Courage was directed by John Cordy, who made such classics as the 1983 animated comedy Once Upon a Time. Not exactly a great track record. Now, as for the plot of Caravan of Courage, it's set shortly before the events of Return of the Jedi and shows a family being stranded on Endor after crash landing. The 2 kids, Mace and Sindel, run out shortly after crashing, and the movie starts with the parents, Catherine and Jeremit looking for them. As they look for the 2, they are kidnapped by the giant humanoid creature known as the Gorax. The Gorax in Star Wars canon has always been interesting to me. For the longest time these movies were canon in the Star Wars timeline, but in 2016 Disney said that they were no longer canon. However, in 2018 on the Star Wars animated TV show Forces of Destiny, in the episode Traps and Tribulations, it was revealed that the traps were set up by the Ewoks to destroy Imperial walkers, were actually meant to take down a Gorax. It's just interesting. The brother and sister camp with the Ewoks after some dispute, and the Ewoks agree to help the siblings rescue the parents from the Gorax. Got all that? Great, let's get to the ratings. First is, as always, Originality. Aside from this being a Star Wars film, it's actually a really original plot. I mean, sure, it's a kidnapping and rescue movie, which could be linked to the likes of Taken. But you have to remember, Taken was released in 2008, and that means this is an original plot, so because of that, it gets a 9 out of 10. Second is storyline. This is where I unfortunately have to deduct points that I really don't want to. This movie has a solid beginning and a really good ending, but unfortunately Act 2 is where the movie kinda drags. Because of that, I'd actually rather it be a short film, since after they leave on their journey to the Gorax lair, it is definitely obvious the writers had no clue where they wanted to go with the story, so they padded scenes in order to reach the 90-minute runtime. 6 out of 10. Next is script. As I said before, in Act 2 the script does drag, but I do have to add an extra point because of a line that unironically made me laugh. 7 out of 10. Next is characters. That's all I really have to say about the characters. Apart from one scene in Act 1, the main siblings never really get past 2 character traits, and they're very one note. The only characters I feel got much development were the Ewoks, which some were actually done quite well since they can't speak English. A well done example would be the lumberjack Ewok called Chukatrok, I think I'm mentioning that right. Even without speaking a word the entire movie, he's displayed as egotistical, naive, and yet covers up all his emotional side, which shows he actually cares. He's hands down the best character. 6 out of 10. Next is acting. I'm just gonna say it, kid actors kinda suck.
If we don't help them, they're gonna die.
There's an old saying that there are two things you should never work with in the film industry: kids and animals. I won't talk much about the kid acting since it's not really their fault that it's bad. Then you got Mace. I get he was 14 at the time, but I feel the exact same way.
It looks like a monster or something real big. Where is it? Where is it?
On the bright side, Warwick Davis did the acting for Wicket in both movies, so that's always amazing to see, since he's actually a really good actor.
A friend with weed is a friend indeed.
5 out of 10. Next is special effects. I can't judge too much since it was a low budget movie from the 80s, but apart from one scene, I saw no problems. And with it, I actually praise most of the special effects, since if it was made nowadays, it would just be crappy CGI. 8 out of 10. 8 is editing. It's alright, I guess. Again, I can't talk too much about it since it's a low budget movie from the 80s, but I will give the scene of the Gorax looking for the one Ewok in his lair some praise, since that's mostly for the music, which I will get back to later. 7 out of 10. 9 is Awesomeness. It's not really that awesome. Not really a hype movie, it's more of a time capsule nowadays and something to look back on and see how far we've come in our filmmaking. 6 out of 10. And lastly is personal opinion. This movie was a great revisit. My mum is more of a fan of this than I am, but it was genuinely nice and relaxing to watch, and definitely a ton of change to what I was used to. 9 out of 10. That brings the total of Ewok Adventure, or Caravan of Courage, to 63 out of 100. And now for my thoughts. Something that I will throw high praise of is the score. I don't usually like to talk about a movie's music since it's not my interest, but I absolutely adore this movie's music. It was composed by Peter Bernstein, who actually was the orchestra for the original Ghostbusters music. Apart from that, everyone can get something out of this movie. I do highly recommend a watch of this movie. And with all that, I hope you enjoyed this review, and until next time, don't drink and pilot your Star Cruiser. Next time on Fallen Angel Productions. Witness before your very eyes the return of Ewan McGregor to cinema in what is probably the greatest horror movie in the 2010s, which isn't saying much. Witness a blend of Stephen King and Kubrick into one film that people have been waiting for 39 years. All that and more on Fallen Angel Productions. Sponsored by Generic Off-Brand Cola. Because when you're parched, Generic Off-Brand Cola is there to help. And in association with that one mosquito that flies around your room and doesn't let you go to sleep. I'm done.